What if I told you that the most feared weapon in Africa today is not a nuclear missile, not a stealth fighter jet, not a cyber warfare system built in Silicon Valley, but camels and monkeys? What if I told you that Captain Ibrahim, the young revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso, has created a force so unconventional, so unpredictable, that the United States, the self-proclaimed master of global warfare, is in absolute panic? This is not fantasy. This is not myth. This is strategy born of necessity, turned into a weapon of imagination. For decades, the U.S. has laughed at Africa, calling its armies weak, its technology backward, its people dependent. But today, that laughter has turned into silence because the camel-monkey army has shattered the Western illusion of invincibility. Camels, the ships of the desert, have been turned into armored beasts, carrying supplies, weapons, and soldiers across terrains where American tanks choke in the sand. Monkeys, the most underestimated creatures of the forest, now act as living drones, climbing into bases, cutting communications, sowing chaos, and vanishing without a trace. Together, they form an army the Pentagon cannot predict, cannot counter, and cannot defeat. And here lies the true fear in Washington. It is not just the camels, not just the monkeys. It is the idea behind them. The idea that Africa no longer needs to copy the West to defend itself. The idea that Africa can turn its own land, its own creatures, its own culture into unstoppable weapons of liberation. The idea that imagination is stronger than trillion-dollar budgets. So when the U.S. generals meet in secret rooms and whisper about camel monkey army, understand this: they are not laughing. They are afraid. Afraid of what it means for Burkina Faso. Afraid of what it means for Africa. Afraid of what it means for an empire built on arrogance, now humbled by a vision it could never imagine. This is not just a story of soldiers and animals. This is the story of Africa rising, of sovereignty unchained, of a new kind of warfare that terrifies the most powerful nation on earth. And it all began with one leader, one vision, and one impossible idea that turned into unstoppable reality. The world has entered an era where myths become reality, where whispers of impossible power suddenly emerge into the light of day. For months, Western intelligence agencies have been puzzled, unable to comprehend the events unfolding in the Sahel. Military convoys that vanish into thin air, drones mysteriously disrupted, soldiers immobilized. Before they could even fire a shot, they searched for answers in technology, in satellites, in cyber warfare. Yet the answer was so unthinkable, so audacious, that it defied the very limits of imagination. Captain Ibrahim, the young and uncompromising leader of Burkina Faso, has unveiled what is now called the Camel Monkey Army, a force so unconventional, so deeply rooted in Africa's forgotten traditions, that the mighty United States trembles. Let us pause here and ask ourselves, how could this be? How could a landlocked nation, mocked for its poverty and underestimated by all, develop a force that outmaneuvers the most advanced militaries in the world? The answer lies not in dollars or steel, but in vision, sovereignty, and the courage to reclaim ancestral power. For centuries, Africa's ecosystems have been seen as little more than background scenery by outsiders. The desert camel, the savanna monkey, the elephant, the eagle. Westerners marveled at them, photographed them, caged them, but never understood them. Yet Africa's people, the true guardians of the land, have always known. These creatures hold secrets, strengths, and abilities that no drone or missile can match. Captain, refusing to bow before Western superiority, tapped into this ancient knowledge. What the West calls primitive, he saw as the foundation of an unbreakable military strategy. The Camel Monkey Army is not fantasy, it is the living, breathing embodiment of Africa's rebirth. Camels, long known as ships of the desert, have been trained into mobile artillery units, capable of carrying heavy loads across scorching terrain where tanks stall and vehicles overheat. But these are not ordinary camels. They are armored, shielded with lightweight plates crafted from local alloys, their humps modified with compartments. Carrying supplies, ammunition, even portable anti-air weapons. A camel can cross 80 kilometers of desert in blistering heat without water, something no American Humvee or French APC can dream of. Saw what others could not. The camel is not a relic of the past, but the war machine of the future. Then there are the monkeys. Agile, intelligent, and fiercely loyal. Once bonded, they have been transformed into reconnaissance and sabotage units, equipped with miniature harnesses carrying cameras, communication relays, and even explosive charges. They infiltrate where no human soldier can go. A squad of trained monkeys can disable an enemy radar installation, cut communication lines, or spread chaos in enemy camps before a single gunshot is fired. Western commanders who once laughed at reports of monkey units soon stopped laughing when their bases fell into disarray without explanation. The Monkey Brigade has become a symbol of psychological warfare as much as physical. For when an enemy soldier hears chattering in the trees, when they see shadows moving in the night, they know it is not merely animals, it is invisible army watching them. This is what terrifies Washington, because no satellite can predict it, no algorithm can model it, no trillion-dollar defense budget can counter it. For all their arrogance, the U.S. generals are facing a weapon they cannot understand. And in warfare, what you cannot understand, you cannot defeat. But beyond the battlefield tactics lies the true genius of Captain S. creation, symbolism. The camel monkey army is not only a force of war, it is a declaration. It tells the world that Africa will fight with what it has, not with what it is told to buy. It tells the West that the billions they spend on weapons are meaningless when faced with a people who know their land, their animals, their history. It tells Africans everywhere that liberation does not require imitation of the West, but innovation born from within. And so, when U.S. analysts write their secret reports, when they meet in hushed tones in the Pentagon, they admit the unthinkable. They are afraid. Afraid not of camels or monkeys in themselves, but of the idea they represent. Because if Burkina Faso can build a revolutionary force from the desert and the jungle, what stops Mali from forging its own eagle battalions? What stops Niger from harnessing elephants as walking fortresses? What stops the entire Sahel from turning nature itself into an ally against foreign dominance? The answer is nothing. Nothing at all. And that is why America fears. Now let us imagine the battlefield of tomorrow. A U.S. convoy rumbles across the Sahel, confident in its armored superiority. Suddenly, camels rise from the dunes, charging in coordinated waves, their riders firing from elevated saddles. Monkeys drop from the cliffs, cutting fuel lines, disabling vehicles. Drones are blinded by swarms of trained birds released from mobile camel units. Within hours, the convoy is immobilized, its high-tech equipment useless in the face of Africa's living arsenal. This is not science fiction, it is the reality that Western powers are already grappling with in classified files they dare not release to the public. Captain Ibrahim, the young man they once mocked as inexperienced, has done what no African leader has done before. He has fused tradition with modernity, turning ridicule into fear, turning imagination into strategy. His camel monkey army is not just a military asset, it is a philosophy of sovereignty. It says to every African, you already have the tools to defeat your oppressors. You already have the power to reclaim your future. You only need the courage to see it. And here lies the greatest humiliation for the United States. They believed power could only be measured in aircraft carriers, in stealth bombers, in nuclear warheads. Yet now they face a reality where the most advanced jet can be outwitted by a camel caravan, where the most sophisticated base can be dismantled by a troop of monkeys. They face the reality that their empire, built on intimidation, is powerless against creativity born of necessity. This is why Burkina Faso has become the beating heart of a new African resistance. Other nations watch and learn. In Mali, whispers grow of bat brigades trained for night operations. In Guinea, fishermen speak of training dolphins for coastal defense. In Chad, leaders dream of desert hawks intercepting Western drones. The spirit has been unleashed, and it cannot be contained. The U.S. media, of course, mocks this. They run cartoons of camels with helmets, monkeys with rifles, thinking laughter will shield them from the truth. But behind the scenes, the panic is undeniable. Military. Advisors warn of unpredictability. Intelligence chiefs admit they underestimated. Economists fret that Africa's refusal to play by Western rules will collapse entire markets. The laughter is a mask, hiding a terror they cannot suppress. And for the people of Burkina Faso, this is a triumph unlike any other. They see their leader not only as a soldier but as a visionary. They see in their camels and monkeys not mere animals, but comrades in the fight for dignity. They see themselves no longer as beggars for Western scraps, but as architects of their own destiny. The camel monkey army is not only a force, it is a story. A story of defiance, of imagination, of an Africa that refuses to kneel. It is a story the West never expected, a story they still cannot comprehend, a story that is only just beginning. And to the world, it delivers a single, undeniable message. The days of underestimating Africa are over. The days of laughing at its potential are gone. For in the deserts and jungles of Burkina Faso a revolution has been born, one that rides on the humps of camels and swings from the trees with monkeys, one that terrifies the most powerful nation on earth, one that reminds us all, Africa will never again be underestimated. The echoes of Captain Ibrahim's camel monkey army are no longer confined to the deserts and savannas of Burkina Faso. They have reverberated into the grand halls of Washington, Paris, and Brussels. Western generals sit around oak tables with furrowed brows, whispering about a force they cannot categorize. Their databases are filled with information on tanks, missiles, stealth aircraft, and cyber warfare. Yet nowhere in their manuals does it describe an army that blends human warriors with the agility of monkeys and the endurance of camels. The United States fears this army not because of its numbers, but because of its unpredictability. America's war machine thrives on predictability. They know how to counter missiles. They know how to jam radar. They know how to infiltrate bases. But how do you counter a troop of monkeys scaling your fortified communication towers in the dead of night? How do you stop camels, nearly silent in their approach, traversing dunes where armored vehicles would suffocate in sand? How do you fight against a philosophy that turns every blade of grass, every creature of the savannah, into a weapon of resistance? The Pentagon has admitted it privately. Has changed the rules of war. He has made the African battlefield asymmetric beyond calculation. The cost of maintaining U.S. bases in the Sahel is now astronomical. Because no matter how advanced their weaponry, they are forced into paranoia. A rustle in the trees is no longer just wind, it could be the monkey brigade. A caravan in the distance is no longer harmless traders, it could be a camel strike force. Fear itself has become S greatest weapon, and it gnaws at the very core of Western military superiority. But let us go deeper. The camel monkey army is not only about defense, it is about reclaiming Africa's narrative. For too long, Western propaganda painted Africans as helpless, incapable, forever dependent on foreign aid and foreign weapons. Shattered this illusion, he proved that African ingenuity is not only alive, it is powerful enough to shake empires. His message to the youth of Burkina Faso and Africa at large is clear. You are not weak, you are not dependent, and you will never again be underestimated. And the people have responded. In Ouagadougou, the capital, murals now cover the walls depicting camels draped in armor, monkeys leaping with flags of independence. Children no longer dream of being rescue projects for Western NGOs, they dream of joining S forces, of serving in an army that belongs to them, not to some foreign power. Farmers, once ignored, now walk with pride, for their camels are not just beasts of burden but comrades in liberation. Hunters, once marginalized, now train alongside soldiers, their knowledge of animal behavior repurposed for national defense. Meanwhile, the West is cornered. American farmers, once assured of African markets, now watch as those very markets slip away, replaced by systems of trade built on African sovereignty and Asian partnership. U.S. corporations once eager to exploit African land for agribusiness and minerals now face expulsion, their contracts torn apart by leaders who point to as their inspiration. Even African leaders who once knelt before Western donors now rise with new courage. They see that sovereignty is possible, that the West is not invincible, that African strength is not a myth but a living reality. Mali strengthens its alliances, Niger expands its resistance, Guinea speaks boldly against exploitation, and even far-off nations like Tanzania and South Africa take notice. The camel monkey army is no longer just Burkina Faso's, it is becoming Africa's symbol of defiance. Now imagine the shock in Washington. A continent once dismissed as weak is uniting, not under American doctrine, but under its own vision of strength. American analysts scramble to discredit, labeling him a dictator, a dangerous radical. They say he manipulates people with fantasy armies. Yet the more they mock, the more his legend grows. What they call fantasy, the African youth call destiny. What they call primitive, Africans call liberation. This is why the U.S. fears, not because camels and monkeys alone can topple an empire, but because of the idea behind them. Because ideas are more dangerous than weapons. Because once an oppressed people believe they are powerful, no empire on earth can stop them. And so we come to the ultimate truth. The camel monkey army is not just about animals, not just about tactics, it is about imagination. Has taught Africa that imagination itself is a weapon, sharper than swords, stronger than bombs, and impossible to defeat. He has awakened something ancient, something buried deep in Africa's soul, the knowledge that the land and its creatures are allies. That freedom comes not from imitation but from innovation born of roots. The conclusion is this: the United States, for all its aircraft carriers and nuclear weapons, has been humbled by a force they never saw coming. Their arrogance has blinded them, their overconfidence has undone them, and their refusal to respect Africa has brought them to fear Africa's most unlikely weapon. They now know that Burkina Faso, led by a captain they once mocked, has changed the trajectory of history. History will not remember America's laughter. History will not remember their ridicule. History will remember the desert caravans that became warriors, the monkeys that became saboteurs, the people who became unbreakable. History will remember that in the face of arrogance and oppression, Burkina Faso found its own path and in doing so, lit a fire across an entire continent. And when future generations tell this story, they will not speak of U.S. power. They will speak of the moment Africa rose. They will speak of the camel monkey army. They will speak of Captain Ibrahim, the young soldier who dared to imagine, and in doing so, terrified the most powerful nation on earth.